last section I talked a little bit about some of the political developments of the decade. Along with the politics, the marches, and those sort of things that were happening, there was a great cultural explosion in Vancouver. So a lot of the posters and things that I picked up were events from the punk rock movement, from different gigs and things that were happening all over the city. And many of these cultural events were, of course, connected to political movements. There was a large direct action movement in Vancouver, and that sort of came to a head with the arrest of a group called the Squamish Five or the Vancouver Five, who were involved in a series of bombings. And in connection with that, there were a number of benefits that were held, and of course one of the Squamish Five was a member of the Subhumans, Jerry Hanna, and so we had a lot of connections and people who may. There was a lot of debate about the use of violence as a tactic and whether it was a good tactic or not, so many people didn't necessarily support the use of violence, but they certainly did want to make sure that these political prisoners, or that these prisoners got a fair trial, and also that the issues that they were talking about were addressed. So the issues were anti-pornography work, were work against the nuclear arms deals, and work in terms of destruction of the environment through projects that BC Hydro was doing. But in addition, there were lots of cultural activities. I have a poster here from Ebenezer Obey, who's a musician from Nigeria. So in the 80s, we started to make contact with world musicians. About a year previous to this, an artist named King Sunny Ade had come from Nigeria, and he filled the Commodore, and the music was just so different from anything we'd ever heard before that it completely blew our minds and started us thinking about things and events in many different ways. So there's a very good representation of all the events that were going on. Of course, we have a night of DOA at the Smiling Buddha, and a few other pieces around here. But also, I sort of collect things that were kind of counter to the things I was into, things that sort of questioned the narratives that I believed in, and they sort of found their way on my wall. So right beside Ebenezer Obey, we have Roy Rogers. I don't know where I came across that pamphlet. We have Arthur Murray Dance Studio. People may not know what that was, but it was a big thing in the 50s and 60s, learning how to dance. I think I may have picked that up because I was involved in Coop Radio as a board member at a certain point, and went to a fundraiser held by the Chinese language program on Coop Radio, and so they had a Arthur Murray demonstration. Another piece that I picked up along the way, not too far from here, so as I say, we're near the corner of Hastings and Carroll, was a pamphlet that was being distributed by the Ku Klux Klan. So we talk about the issues that are happening now about racism and Black Lives Matter, and they are important today, and they were important back then. This was handed to me by a person in a full Ku Klux Klan costume, white robe and white hood, and standing on Hastings Street handing out pamphlets to people. The other sort of oddball piece here, I don't know if you can zoom into that. I'll have to grab my wood pin. Uncle Len of the SPCA. So Uncle Len, this was a program on Cable 4 in Vancouver. It was a community program, so I was very interested in community events, and a friend of mine worked at the SPCA and worked on this, so I found this and I thought it was kind of funny in contrast to the other pieces on the wall. Many of the other buttons come from a woman named Melva Forsberg. She called herself Melva's Buttons, and made and sold buttons at events all around Vancouver, and anybody who was active in the 80s up to almost now would have at least one of Melva's buttons.
Hang on, brother.
How's it going?
Good, bro.
All right. Oh well.